Hello. Today I am here to talk on the general principles of fair trial. The word trial has not been defined in the Criminal Procedure Code. In fact, trial is a procedure or is a process of judicial examination of the facts of the case to discover the truth in order to decide the fact in issue and arrive at a just decision. Please mind my words. Take note of it. I had said examination of the facts of the case, examination of the facts of the case to discover the truth in order to decide the fact in issue. Now there are three important words: facts of the case, discover the truth, and decide the fact in issue, and to come to a just decision. Now the first and the most foremost important point that one has to understand is understand what is a fact. Indian Evidence Act has talked about it, or it has been defined in Indian Evidence Act that fact means and includes anything, state of things, relation of things being capable of being pursued by the fact means and includes anything, state of things, relation of things capable of being pursued by a human or mind, and any mental condition of which a person is conscious about. Now what is a fact? First part of the definition says anything, state of things, and relation of things capable of being pursued by the mind, by a person. Now, fact means that I am delivering a lecture right now, you are hearing it, or you are looking at it, is a fact. Now, there are a number of circumstances in a case, a number of facts that come before the court, whether a knife was used, whether a gun was used, whether a stone was used, etc., etc., etc. These are all the facts which cumulatively decide whether that offense has taken place or not. Next important thing is any mental condition of which a person is conscious about. What do we mean by this? Right now when you are listening to me, you might form an opinion that whether this man is delivering a proper lecture, whether this man is doing a proper job, whether he's just blah blahing, or whether he's giving us any good substance. This impression is cast upon you and you form an opinion, and this is called as any mental condition of which a person is conscious about. That means a person saw running behind B with a knife in his hand. The impression that may be caused means that he is going to kill him. This might be the impression that has been created in your mind, and this is what we call as any mental condition of which a person is conscious about. Okay, so the next important point to understand is, once we understand what is a fact, the second most important point to understand is what is a fact in issue. It is alleged that A has murdered B. Now the prosecution is going to file a charge sheet against A, thereby stating that A has murdered B. Have we yet come to the conclusion whether A has murdered B or not? No. This is the fact which has been alleged. This is the fact which is the prosecution relies upon or considers it as a fact based upon the evidence or the some material that they have collected against the accused person. Now, the court has to decide, and that is why the fact in issue is whether A has committed the murder of B or not. And all the relevant factors considering this particular murder, that means A, whether it was a knife, whether it was a gun, whether it was a murder in a fit of rage, whether it was a private defense, etc., etc., etc. All these things will become a fact in issue which has to be decided by the court, and this has to be decided and arrived in. The court has to come to a conclusion so far as such is concerned, but that conclusion or that decision has to be a just decision. Now, when will this be considered as a just decision? This will be considered as a just decision when it will be a fair trial, and the basic concept of our system, adversarial system, that is, there is a prosecution, there is a defense, and also there is a third person, that is a judge, sitting there as a third person, as an umpire, as a neutral party, which is looking at the particular scene as if, or to understand and to give it a third person's point of view and then come to a conclusion. So the primary aim of the system is to give a fair trial to the accused. Fair trial to the accused. Fair trial to the accused. I am again repeating, a fair trial to the accused. Because the cardinal principle of our criminal justice system is, or the cardinal principle of a criminal justice is, that the accused should be considered as innocent unless and until proved otherwise. So for this just decision to come into existence, and for this just decision to come into existence, a fair trial has to be given. And what are the parameters of a fair trial? The first parameter of a fair trial is that the trial should be before an impartial judge. We see so many times that the High Court judges say, not before me. Recently we have come across an example where one of the justices of the Supreme Court has categorically stated that, or has rescued himself from hearing the matter of Parambir Singh, in which he has alleged certain things against state of Maharashtra. This is just an example. Now, the second important point is what? There should be a fair prosecutor. Fair prosecutor means a prosecutor is not supposed to see that the accused goes behind the bars or is hanged till death. The job of the prosecutor is not to impress upon the court that he has committed the murder, but the job of the prosecutor is only to put before the court the true and the correct facts of the charge sheet, or true and correct picture before the court. And at this point I also mean that it is not absolutely not necessary for the prosecutor to rely blindly upon what the police are saying. Otherwise, the police would have filed a charge sheet, the court would have asked the accused whether do you plead guilty or not, he would have gone through the charge sheet and he would have decided that he is guilty or not guilty. Then why the prosecutor should come into picture? So it is the job of the prosecutor to merely put the picture as it is, fair picture, correct facts before the court. Next important point. So the first point is that the trial should be before an impartial judge. Next is that the trial should be conducted by a fair prosecutor. There should be an atmosphere of judicial calmness. Judicial calmness would also include a judge who sits there with an absolute stable mind. He should not be wavered by what happens in the proceedings. And this also includes that the court should not be influenced by any social media, anything that is printed in the newspapers. He should be an unbiased and an absolutely neutral man who will conduct a trial. So this comes to the point that the judge should not be sitting in the court with a predetermined mindset. It is alleged that A has planted bomb in Nashik outside a mosque. The presiding judge, for example, let us assume is justice or is a man from Muslim faith. Should he sit there with a predetermined mindset? No. I don't mean to say that there is any religious difference. He should not sit there by a predetermined mindset. If he is a Hindu sitting as a judge, he should not consider that the bomb planted was not by a Hindu or was by a Muslim. His emotions, his upbringing should not matter when he is going to decide a trial, because a trial is going to decide the fate of the people at large, the accused and the victim. And that is why I say that the trial has to be an absolutely unbiased, without any prejudice, without any predetermined mindset. It is not only the victim who is at stake, it is also the accused who is at stake, because tomorrow, again, it is a principle in criminal law that one innocent should not be put behind bars. Let 100 may go scot-free. One should not be put behind the bars for what he has not committed. You might consider this as very funny, but if it is you who is put in the box, alleged and accused of raping or murdering an XYZ person, and when you know from the bottom of your heart that you are not the one who has committed this particular offense, how would it feel? Then whether those 100 will matter or whether your life will matter. And that is why I say that it should be an absolutely unbiased, non-judgmental and a fair trial given to the accused. Now, I would like to quote a simple example right now, upon which we will further discuss what is the meaning and the concept of fair trial. I was appearing for one of the accused in Pune district courts in a state case of murder, where the accused was alleged of murdering his wife, for he suspected her that she was having an extramarital affair or some relations with some third person. Now this case was undertaken by me as a pro bono or as a part of the legal aid provided to the accused. In this case, the charge sheet was filed, the accused was produced before the court, the trial was to start in another date or so. The list of witnesses was given, charges were framed. I was interviewing the accused, I was trying to understand the case. It was hardly 1 or 2 days that I had taken up that case. I went to the jail on quite many occasions to interview him. The last time that I went to the jail, I understood that that man was not in a very stable condition. But at that time, I could not do anything. So the next time when the accused was brought before the court, I again was taking some instructions from him in the court, and during such, it came to me, or I realized that the accused was not answering to the questions in a very relevant manner. He was behaving in a very irrational manner. He was not able to understand the consequences of his answers. He was not able to understand what questions were put to him. And so I thought this accused was not mentally stable, and it would be most dangerous to put him to trial at this particular point, because he was not giving any instructions properly. At this juncture, when the first witness was brought by the prosecution, who was a spot witness, who was a pancha witness, who had stood as a witness for a panchanama of the spot where the murder took place, I moved an application before the court, thereby stating that I am ready to conduct the case, but upon taking instructions from the accused, it so appears that the accused is not in a fit mental state to stand the trial, and I requested the court to get him in the box and examine him, and as per the provisions of CRPC, do the needful. Unfortunately, again, with due respect, the court was not in the frame of mind to listen to me. The court thought that I was delaying the whole procedure, or it was one of the tactics to delay the trial. I requested the court once again that I have put up an application, kindly look into it. Now, what the court should have done as a fair judge, he should have called the accused, he should have put questions to him, put 4 questions, 5 questions, understand whether he is understanding the relevance of it or not, and then decide. In such circumstances, what the court did, the court asked me a question. Yes, Mr. Lawyer, do you know for what is he being tried for? I said, yes, of course, sir. He is being tried for under section 302 for committing the murder of his wife. The allegations are grave, I understand. But trial is a trial. We have to be a fair, one has to be a fair prosecutor, one has to be a fair judge, one has to be a fair defense counsel at the same time. So the court asked me a question. Do you think, Mr. Counsel, any man would remain sane if he commits the murder of his own wife? I said, sir, this is a very premature stage where we can come to the conclusion whether he has in fact murdered his wife or not. And if the court is sitting with such an approach, with a very predetermined approach, the fate of the accused is thereby sealed. What is the point in giving him a trial if at such a stage the court is asking me such a question? So, the point I think I have made very clear, that whether I would have got a fair trial, the answer is a negative. Whether the court was sitting with a predetermined mindset, the answer is in positive. Whether I would have got a fair trial, the answer is in negative. After too much of perseverance, after too much of request, after too much of insistence, too much of typical legal or typical pressure put upon the court then brought the accused in the witness box, put him questions, and he came to the conclusion that he needs to be sent to a civil surgeon, thereby to be examined and report be called, and then further proceedings to take place. Thank God my good sense prevailed and I persisted upon my demand. But if tomorrow, if it would have not been done and the lawyer would have succumbed to the undue pressure put upon by the court to examine the witness who is present in the court, whether damage would have been caused to the accused or not is the big question to be determined. And yes, the answer is yes, it would have certainly costed quite a lot to the accused person by sitting behind the bars for the rest of his life. Now, this is a simple example which I have given. On the basis of this, I would like to state that in the case of state of Uttar Pradesh versus Naresh in 2001, 4 SCC, page number 324, the Honorable Supreme Court had observed that every accused is presumed to be innocent unless his guilt is proved. So the first principle is unbiased approach, neutral judge, presumption of innocence. In our example, was absolutely kept aside. So the most important part is the court has to be unbiased, without any predetermined mindset, till the time his innocence is not proved. The accused should, till the time his guilt is not proved, the accused should always be considered as innocent. Okay. Now, the question is, when does the trial begin and what do we mean by a fair trial? The trial begins not at the time when the charge sheet is filed before the court, but the trial begins when the charges are framed under section 211 of the Criminal Procedure Code. Now, what do we mean by framing of charge? Framing of charge means, and the court has to give a fair idea to the accused person. Fair idea means to the point idea as to what is he going to be tried for. The contents of the section along with the facts alleged against him should be explained to the accused person in the language that he understands, and then that will make the picture clear that whether the accused has understand that for what is he going to stand a trial for. The court also, as per section 228, 240, 246 and 251, should state the particulars of the offence under which the accused will be tried. It is the right of the accused person to have a precise and specific acquisitions as provided under section 211 of the code. As a part of the trial, the presence of the accused in court is an important issue, is an important aspect. A trial cannot be conducted. For a fair trial to happen, accused has to understand what is happening in the court, what is being recorded as evidence. He should be given an opportunity to hear everything. And why do I say so? Because at the fag end of the trial, there is a stage which is called as recording the statement of the accused. Now, what is recording the statement of the accused? The first question that the court puts to the accused is, whether have you heard the evidence given before the court against you? And when this question is asked, if his presence was not there in the court when the trial was conducted, can it become a fair trial? No. Can the court put such a question then to the accused person? No. Yes, the court can put such a question to the accused person only if his personal exemption has been exempted. He has been allowed by the court to remain present. But the court asks the lawyer prior to giving evidence or recording the evidence as to whether the accused is present or not. And if the accused is not present, the court will always ask you to give a application to that effect, thereby stating that I am ready to conduct the trial in the absence of the accused. And this is called as a fair trial. Because the acts of the advocate will be taken as the acts of the accused person, and then if such thing has happened, the consequences of the same has to be borne by the accused person. But this is fair because this is an understanding, because the court has given an opportunity, because if the accused is not present, he can put hold to the trial, but he will make sure that the accused remains present on the next date, and then the trial will be conducted before him. So that is the most important part of this fair trial. The most important part is again section 273 of the Criminal Procedure Code contemplates that the evidence has to be taken in the presence of the accused. The rest of the procedure may go on. Let us assume the accused has not been brought from the court, jail, accepted, nothing, no problem. But when the evidence is to be recorded, it has to be recorded in his presence. And section 273 of the Criminal Procedure Code contemplates and is very clear on this particular point. Now, most important point is, if the accused is found incapable of understanding the proceedings by reason of unsoundness of mind, his case will be dealt according to the provisions of the section 328 to 339 of the Criminal Procedure Code. As I told you earlier, in that particular case, I had put up an application before the court that according to section 328, 329, let the court put him questions. If the court finds it inappropriate to conduct the trial or to proceed with the trial, he can send the accused to the civil hospital for examination, and then the proceedings will begin. So till the time, if at all, let us assume the accused is decided, or the court or the medical report comes as he is mentally unstable and is not fit for trial, then till the time the accused is treated in the mental hospital, is given treatment, and he becomes fit for trial, the trial remains suspended. In state of Maharashtra versus Dr. Parag Paranspe, again a case of 302 where I was representing the accused person, the Honorable Court was fair enough to accept this particular fact that the accused is not in a fit mental condition, referred him to a civil surgeon, civil hospital. The report came that the accused is not fit for trial. He was put in asylum. He was given treatment. Upon being treated, only after the certificate of the doctor and the doctor being examined to that effect that the accused is fit for trial, only after that the trial commenced again. So this is the importance of the accused remaining present first. Second, evidence being recorded in the presence of the accused. Nowadays, presence of the accused certainly can be secured via video conferencing, and this will be considered as presence of the accused, because he will be able to understand the gravity of the evidence given against him. He will also able to understand who has stated what against him, so that he will be capable of understanding and giving answers at the stage of recording the statement of the accused under section 313 of the Criminal Procedure Code. Another important point I forgot to tell you at the initial point, under section 207 of the Criminal Procedure Code, it is one of the basic categories to decide whether the trial is fair trial or not. Under section 207 of the Criminal Procedure Code, the police are bound to give free copies of the charge sheet or the final report under section 5, supposed to give free copies of the charge sheet to the accused person for the charge sheet or the final report filed under section 173 of the Criminal Procedure Code. Okay. Now, why they have to give the copies of this to the accused person? Because the accused person has to understand the allegations against him put by the accused, by the police. He has to understand what evidence the police are going to bring against him. He has to understand who are the witnesses who are to be examined. There are certain trials like Mocha, POSCO, or NIA Act, where the offences are severe, the allegations are grave. In such cases, it is quite a possibility that the name of the witness may or is kept blank, thereby to not to expose the witness. But in regular trials, in regular criminal trials, the name of the witnesses are always present on the statements recorded by the police under section 161, 162 and or 164, confessions. Now, further to strengthen the fair trial, the Supreme Court in the case of Badri versus State of Rajasthan, IR 1976 Supreme Court 560, held that where the prosecution witness was not allowed to be cross-examined. I will take a pause at this particular juncture. I have explained you what is supply of free copies to the accused. I have explained you why the presence of the accused is very important. I have explained you why evidence should be recorded in the presence of the accused person. I have explained you what is a predetermined mindset. I have explained you what is an unbiased court. But the most important aspect of a fair trial is that the defense should be allowed to put questions to the witnesses, to destroy or to create a suspicion in the mind of the court that this was not, that offense may not have been committed by this particular accused, or offense has not been committed by this particular accused, because a murder has taken place is a fact. It is proved by the post-mortem that the accused, that the deceased has, or there is a deceased, or this particular person has died, and he has died because of because of I would say because of has died because of the injuries caused by a weapon to that particular deceased person.